So here's some examples where you simplify factorial expressions. And I'm going to start fairly simple and then build up to something more complicated. A good rule of thumb, though, in all of these problems that you'll observe is to simplify expressions like this, so a ratio of factorials, what you want to do is leave the smaller factorial alone and expand the larger one in terms of the smaller. So I think that's worth writing down. So the key here is to leave the smaller factorial alone and expand the larger one. We'll just put expand the larger and leave it at that. To show why that's the best strategy for these, I'm going to expand the top and bottom on this first one. So 2 factorial is 1 times 2. 5 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. So notice that whatever the smaller factorial is, you're going to have those factors in common in the numerator and denominator. So those will cancel. This is a 2 factorial up here. This is a 2 factorial down here. And so the 1 times 2 is going to cancel, and you're left with just 1, since everything canceled in the numerator. Here, because these 2 factorials cancel. And so we're left in the denominator with 3 times 4, so that's 12. Well, let me write it out here. 3 times 4 times 5, so that's 12 times 5. So our final answer here is 1 over 60. Okay, but notice, so it's the smaller factorial that cancels on the top and bottom, and then we would want to expand the larger one to identify the remaining factors. So 24 factorial over 22 factorial, we definitely don't want to sit here and write out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 24. Instead, we would want to kind of work based on what we observed in this first example. So leave the smaller factorial, in this case the 22 factorial, alone. And then with 24 factorial, so I'll write this out a little bit. So this is 3, blah, 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 blah. Eventually you'll get to 22, and then 23, and then 24. Well, the 1 through 22, this is 22 factorial. So we're going to take the 24 factorial and write it as, so instead of writing 1 times 2 times 3 times 4, we're just going to write 22 factorial, so that covers 1 through 22, and then times the extra factors on the end here with your larger factorial. So in this case, 23 times 24. And so the 22 factorial cancels. Our answer is 23 times 24, whatever that is. I'm too lazy. Okay. So this is the real upshot. I mean, we're going to be building up to stuff like this, which will be will really come in handy in 9.6. So you need to file this away for a couple of weeks. But say we want to simplify something like n factorial over n plus 4 factorial. So the first thing is to identify, okay, so which one's the smaller factorial? In this case, the n factorial. So that's the one that we would leave alone. N plus 4 factorial. Well, so that would be 1 times 2 times 3. Eventually you would get to n. And then what would come after n? So then it'd be n plus 1. And then n plus 2. And then n plus 3, n plus 4. I made the difference too much. But so the 1 times 2 until you get to n, this is n factorial, times, then you start listing your successive factors after n factorial. So that'll be n plus 1, n plus 2, n plus 3, n plus 4. That keeps happening. My board here. So the n factorials cancel, so we'll leave a 1 in the numerator. And so this is what n factorial over n plus 4 factorial simplifies to. Let me put one more example here, where it's in terms of n. Say we want to simplify, so I'll make this example 4. N plus 1 factorial over n minus 2 factorial. So when you've got the negatives in there, I mean the minus, let's be careful. So the smaller factorial is this one in the denominator. It's the n minus 2 factorial. If we want to expand the larger one, so with this n plus 1 factorial up here, that will be 1 times 2 times 3, blah, blah, blah. Eventually you'll get to n minus 2. So this is the n minus 2 factorial times, so let's think about what would come next. What would be 1 bigger than n minus 2? So just add 1 to that, that'll be n minus 1. Add 1 to that, that'll be n. Add 1 to that, that'll be n plus 1. There it is. So this is n minus 2 factorial times n minus 1 times n plus 1. You just keep adding 1 until you hit this value here. So the n minus 2's cancel. And so our final answer here is n minus 1 times n plus 1. I don't know. I like having the n in front better, I think. So that's what that example 4 simplifies to.